because we had went back to the house. I went back to the house before they did the burn to try to, just grab a couple of things that we thought we may need. And, it couldn't even be in the house. Just be in the house. Well, I had a short list of things, and I pretty much know where those things are.
Right.
And I just aborted the mission.
Why is that?
You couldn't be in the house. The overwhelming smell, the irritation, the respiratory, the
wow.
Getting, we were there for a very short time. I would say, 10 to 15 minutes max. And at that point, it was just overwhelming, and
wow.
Just could not be there.
Wow. Welcome back to Just the Facts, Fact Ohio. I'm Mark Good, and I'm pleased to have with me Josh. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Josh, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm pretty much a lifelong resident of East Palestine. I'm married to my wife, Abby, and we have 4 children.
Oh, cool. What are their ages?
They are 18, 19, 20, and soon to be 21.
Wow. Great family planning.
That's the way it worked out for us. Yeah.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, as the father of 5, I can relate.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I get it. Well, that's wonderful. So, lifelong resident of East Palestine. So you were born here or moved here, or how did you come to be here?
I was born in Pennsylvania, and we moved to East Palestine when I was less than 1 year old. So went to school here, graduated here.
Wow. So what did your dad or your mom work, or?
My dad, he's a truck driver.
Okay.
And he's been doing that for 50 years or more by now. And
wow.
He's got several million miles on the belt.
Wow. So you grew up here. Did you, after graduating high school, did you stay and work here? Did you go away to school, or what'd you do?
I went away to school for a while. Originally, I was at the University of Akron, and I ended up down the line transferring to Kent and getting a couple of degrees from there.
Oh, really? What's your degrees in?
The first one was just an associate of applied science, and then later on I got a degree in physical therapy assistant technology.
Oh, wow. So what do you do now?
Currently, I work for United Healthcare.
Okay, cool. You live in East Palestine. Do you have to commute to work, or do you work from home? Or
Yeah, I was working from home before this happened. And then when it did and we were evacuated from the home, it was difficult to work from home. But
right.
I got some quite unparalleled support from my employer during this time. And
wonderful.
Yeah, it was very much a blessing. And we were able to get some new computers sent to me, and I'm just currently now working out of the hotel.
Wow. So let's go back to February 3rd, the night or the morning of the derailment, and tell me what you experienced, what it was like in the days afterwards. Kind of walk through your personal experience.
Well, it was very it was interesting, to say the least. We, that evening, just kind of sitting there waiting, for my wife to get home from work. And, she got home and she was saying that there was something that happened, something was wrong, with the train that had gone through.
Right.
But there was still a lot of questions and not really sure what was happening. And then you could see, people posting things on social media, and, like I said, we have kids, and, they're quite fluent with those things.
Sure.
So we were kind of getting some updates, and, look out the window, and in the, short distance away, you could see the light from the fire, like lighting up the smoke in the
Really? So you were close enough to see that?
Yeah, our house. Well, our house is pretty tall, so we were up looking out our 3rd floor window where we could see over top of pretty much everything.
Okay.
And we were just trying to talk with friends and family, trying to figure out what was happening, what was going on, and maybe what we should do.
Right.
So there was a lot of stuff, and then you hear train derailed, and just kind of had to see it for ourselves.
Sure.
So we kind of hopped in the car, and we were driving down Alice Street, which is a block over from Taggart, which is where the train is, and you could feel the heat from the fire
Really?
through the car and the windows.
Wow.
And as we were getting down closer, and we got down to the parking lot of the local establishment there, and you could just see the fire, you could see the smoke. There were people there watching, and we just turned around and came back home, and it was time to go.
Was there any information out there or awareness that this was a toxic spill?
Not originally. I don't remember that. We were kind of in the process of trying to gather some things when we got the evacuation notices on our phone.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, we were already kind of sort of in the process, but we knew that we actually had to get out and go, and so we just kind of grabbed some things. And
How far, just sort of line of sight, is your home from the site of the derailment?
it's less than 1 mile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's less than 1 mile. We're in the 1 mile, the original 1 mile, evacuation zone.
Yeah.
And we're trying to talk with all the kids. They're all older. The youngest one is a senior in high school.
Sure.
They're out doing their things, and we just wanted to make sure that we talked to them, see who's coming with us. We didn't know where we were going,
Right.
but who's coming with us? Where are you going? What is your plan?
Right.
And then once we were able to talk with all of them, I had been calling my parents who lived nearby to see if they let them know that they did need to leave.
Sure.
And do you need help? My mom is on home dialysis. They're in their 70s.
Right.
And do you need help?
Yeah.
And so we end up going over there. I was trying to help carry out some of the stuff that they need,
Sure.
for those things. And then we stopped over by her parents real quick to just touch base and see what was happening, and go from there.
So, but again, this is interesting. I hadn't really thought about this before you mentioned it. When the call to evacuate happened, was there any offer of assistance from any local organizations to help people like your mom?
At that particular point, very shortly after the derailment and chemical spill, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think that they ever mentioned that anybody, offered to assist them. But, in the immediate time after, I don't think that anybody knew the scope of what was really going on.
Right, right. Well, that's one of the things that, we were talking earlier about the fact that there wasn't any advanced knowledge or information that the train was carrying toxic chemicals, so that when the derailment occurred, the level of risk that presented to the local community and then to the first responders was unknown, right? Because nobody knew, right? So when you then say to people, get out, right? There's folks, like you said, like your mom and dad who are, getting up there that might need help getting out, right?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for you, right, a son who's concerned, they might get stuck.
That's something that's possible, but, that's what we do in East Palestine.
Yeah.
We take care of each other, we try
That's
to help
great.
each other out. And, like I said, that's our family. So,
Sure.
That's just normal for us.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So where did you go when you evacuated?
Well, we originally just drove in the opposite direction.
Very smart.
we didn't know where to go. We thought about trying to go to another family member's house, but in reality, none of them were really far enough away. And
Were you given any direction when they said evacuate? Did they say how far or whatever?
No, just pretty much to evacuate. You just get that text message on your phone, similar to like an Amber Alert.
Right, okay.
And it just, it gave a intersection. The original evacuation point was the intersection of James and Taggart Street, which is literally 2 or 3 blocks from our house.
Wow.
And then at some point they changed that 1 mile radius from that intersection to one further down the road at the Taggart and Pleasant.
Okay. Okay. So you thought about family or friends or family to go with, but they weren't far enough away.
Yeah, and we were just we were driving, and it was, I'm not sure what time it was by that time of night, but we ended up nearby in Columbiana, which is 9 or 10 miles down the road.
Right.
There is a hotel,
Right.
and we just decided that we had to try to get a hotel for the night.
Sure.
And when we got there, I walked in, and the lobby was pretty full of people, and I got up to the counter and asked if they had a room. They did. Can I bring my dog in? And they said yes. They were pet friendly. Get the booking, and we go out, go outside to get my wife and the dog.
Sure.
And then we ended up, by the time we got back in, they were turning people away.
Wow.
So we got one of the very last rooms.
Wow.
For that night.
I'm curious, how long between the time you got the alert to the time you got to the hotel? Do you remember how long that was? An hour? 2 hours?
I would say that was probably closer to 2 hours.
Okay.
Because so by the time we gathered up stuff, and then we needed to make sure that all the kids were
Right.
going to be going somewhere other than there, and going over with the parents. And we did go. We ran back to the house because we were like, we got out so fast.
Sure.
And we needed make sure we had a few things, just some clothing and some toiletries and some
Sure.
things like that.
Sure.
Because we didn't even really know where to go. And we go outside to go to leave, and we have like our one daughter was there, and then her boyfriend, and then some kid named George. They're like, we have George. I'm like, who's George?
Who's George?
So we just he ended up he ended up with us in the hotel, and we ended up getting I think we were there one night by ourselves, and the next night we were able to get a hotel room, and that's when some of the kids were coming up to stay. And then George, he just ended up, he was a neighbor of the daughter's boyfriend, and
Right.
he just actually didn't have anywhere to go.
Wow.
So like I said, that's what we do. That's what you're supposed to do, especially at a time like that. And so by the time we got up to the hotel, it may have been, it's kind of blurry, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what, I would say a couple of hours.
So when you got the word to evacuate, were you told how long to stay away?
No, not initially.
Okay.
We just basically were at that point kind of following the news, and,
Right.
and there was information was kind of being passed along at that point.
Right.
That there was a derailment, and there were some toxic chemicals involved, and the fire was still going. My time frame might be a little bit off. I think it burnt for 2 or 3 days before they decided that it was the best option to do the so-called controlled
burn. Yeah, right.
My understanding is a controlled burn is in a situation where you're going to be able to control the amount of oxygen and the temperature and that kind of thing, as opposed to just lighting something on fire. But
And what did they do here? They just lit something on fire, correct? Or was it a controlled burn? I mean, I don't know.
well, my understanding is they did something, and they put these little charges on the tankers that were affected,
Right.
that let the liquid come out so that it wouldn't reach that critical temperature, which could possibly make it explode. I think was the the two options. That the fire was burning, causing the internal temperature of the tankers to reach
Right.
whatever that critical number is.
Right.
And I guess it was close enough to be a major concern, which it does make sense to me.
Sure.
And I'm not sure what other options that they considered, but in the end, they opted for the controlled burn in an attempt to not have what would have been considered a catastrophic explosion.
Right.
So
you guys were hanging out at the hotel, sort of monitoring the news, waiting, right?
yeah, we were pretty much I think like everybody, in shock.
Yeah.
This type of thing is, you see it on TV. It doesn't happen in your town, or it's on a TV show or in a movie,
Right.
as opposed to a real life scenario.
Right.
And then, as they kind of give the updates and, discuss the options and controlled burn. And then after the burn was over and, extinguished, and, at that point, they were, when they lifted the evacuation order, some people just immediately, went back home. We did not. It was just kind of a scenario where, because we had went back to the house. I went back to the house before they did the burn to try to, just grab a couple of things that we thought we may need. And, it couldn't even be in the house. Just be in the house. Well, I had a short list of things, and I pretty much know where those things are.
Right.
And I just aborted the mission.
Why is that?
You couldn't be in the house. The overwhelming smell, the irritation, the respiratory, the
Wow.
getting, we were there for a very short time. I would say, 10 to 15 minutes max. And at that point, it was just overwhelming, and
Wow.
just could not be there.
Wow.
And my line of thought was, if my house is at that point, I can't be in it because, the overwhelming smell and the irritation and everything that was happening was too much. That, I think they lifted the evacuation order. It was 48 hours, 72 hours, or whatever it was after they did the burn.
Mm-hmm.
And, just my line of thought was, the governor of the state of Ohio was on TV before they did the burn, when they were going door to door to make sure that people were out, and they were using military force to remove some people. And there was going to be charges against people if they had children in the home and they didn't evacuate.
Wow. I hadn't heard that.
So if it's that serious of a situation, and, these chemicals are, supposedly that bad for us, what the governor was calling the death zone on TV, 2 days later, it's not the everything is okay zone and everything is fine zone.
Right.
I mean, that's just my opinion for what it's worth. But
Wise man.
I have my moments. That may have been one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Well, particularly because you had gone back to your home and had experienced the respiratory, reaction, or the reaction in your respiratory system to what was going on. I mean, you had firsthand knowledge of just how dangerous and irritating those chemicals were.
well, yeah, not just me. Everybody. We had all gotten. I think I'm the only one that didn't actually vomit the next day.
Wow.
After that Friday night, the next day, there was everybody. Everybody had these headaches, these terrible headaches.
When you say everybody, you mean within your family?
Yeah. We had the headaches. There was a lot of vomiting going. I didn't vomit, but others did. And we're all adults here.
Sure.
The color of my urine in the morning, it looked like it was coffee or tea, like brown, dark,
yeah, right.
as opposed to what it would normally look like.
Sure.
So I'm pretty sure that means that, your body ingested something.
And this is before the control burn. This is exposure before.
This is before the burn. This is just from exposure from that night.
Wow. Wow.
Just what we experienced. There was some that had, like skin irritation on the back of their hands.
Right.
I know that my forehead was a little, because I had a hat on, it was cold out.
Sure.
I had some irritation there. But at the moment, you don't really think about seeking the medical treatment, that may or may not have helped or done anything.
Right.
But, you're just in shock, about it, like what happened. And then just that complete uncertainty of, well, we told you to get out, you can't go back, but when can you go back? Or what is really going to happen?
Or is it really safe to go back when they say you can go back?
Well, that's...
Which was the question I think it was in your mind, right?
Well, absolutely. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a biologist. I'm not an environmental scientist. But I do know a few certain things that, we learned right here in the East Palestine Middle School and High School. They were trying to say that these chemicals just disappear. They're there, and they're volatile, meaning that they're unstable, but they just disappear. Well, we learned that the law of conservation of mass is that matter cannot be created or destroyed, but that it can only transfer forms.
Right.
It doesn't just disappear. So if it's inside my home in we'll call it a gas state, fumes,
right,
smoke, or whatever, that it can change forms.
Right.
And it may, at that point, decide to settle on the surfaces in my home, whatever those may be.
Right.
But it's not going to disappear.
Right.
Again, my opinion, I'm not a chemist.
Sure. But you're educated. I mean, that's what you're doing is, 2 + 2 = 4. And there's risk.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of common sense in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, under the circumstances, were there any other options? Were there any other better options? Again, I don't really know much about those kinds of things. But
how long did the physical reactions that you guys experienced, how long did those last?
Originally, it's again, like I said, it's a little bit blurry, sure. But I would say at least for a couple of few days like that, and then, I ended up in the emergency room. I had, had a vehicle that was sitting there that needed a repair, and I ended up, just kind of putting it off.
Sure.
And, and then I ended up calling AAA to see if I could get it towed.
Right.
And so just to go and sit there and wait for the AAA guy to show up, I still had, some, I guess, lingering effects, but, just being, and I wasn't even inside the house. I was outside the house waiting, and I ended up in the ER. I blew my nose, and the blood that came out of my nose was alarming. And, I was having difficulty breathing, so I ended up going to the ER. They gave me a breathing treatment, took a chest x-ray, give me some steroids, some prednisone, like for inflammation. Mm-hmm. And, I was sitting on the, the gurney, I guess it is, waiting,
sure.
The ER doc comes in. Right. I'm in the gown, and he was wanting to listen to me breathe. And he says, "Oh, what's this rash all over you?" I said, well, what are you talking about?
Right.
And he's trying to show me, and I can't really see. So he took my phone and took pictures so that I could see.
Wow.
And essentially my whole back was covered in this rash, and it's kind of up on my shoulders, kind of coming around into the front just a little bit.
Wow.
But, and that's, like with me not like being there.
Right. Right.
I wasn't, living there. I didn't go back to the home after they lifted the evacuation order. And then, at least for a while after all of that, even just coming back into town, depending on where you were, I would get headaches. Other people in the family also,
wow.
Would get these headaches and just not feel right. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a chemist, but, if you're going to have symptoms from being exposed to something, I'm guessing that's a high dose or a high exposure as opposed to a low exposure over a long period of time developing some type of illness or sickness from it.
Correct.
If you're getting short-term exposure symptoms, I do have some type of medical training. Like I said, I am a licensed physical therapist assistant. I'm certainly not a doctor,
right.
But, short-term acute symptoms is probably going to be from a high exposure level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, wow. So you go to the hospital, they treat what's going on. Did they offer any opinion as to why you were, or what had stimulated this? Were they aware at the hospital of the...
Oh, yeah, they were definitely aware of the hospital. There were some local medical facilities that were not seeing people from East Palestine. If you went to an urgent care and you were from East Palestine, they were turning you away. I heard many people that had happened to, and they were just being told to go to the hospital. So when I went in, and what are you here for? I said, I'm from East Palestine, and they just automatically knew why I was there.
Right. Wow. So after you returned from the hospital, you still were living in the hotel, correct?
Oh, yes.
So you're financing this stay yourself, right? Or not?
Yeah, well, I'm spending my own money.
Yeah.
And then originally we were getting reimbursed from the railroad, which is what they were doing for the people that were evacuated.
Right.
They had set up what they called a family assistance center in nearby New Waterford. And you could go in and take your receipts that you'd had for typically like gas, food, lodging. Originally, I think they were doing some clothing reimbursements, any expenses for your pets, that kind of thing. And if you were in that 1 mile radius, they were reimbursing you. And we did that for about 9 days. And they were offering to do an air test inside your home. The railroad, the EPA, whatever, and supposed to be some other third-party company in there. I can't remember the name of it. But, they were supposed to be offering air testing to come in. But, again, I'm not an expert, but I did talk to a few experts.
Sure.
And the recommended air testing was they would set up some type of machine that's going to, kind of have a fan or something in the collection area and let it run for 8 or 10 or 12 hours and send it out to the lab to be analyzed. And that was what was explained to me by a few different professionals who do that kind of work, is what would be an air test. And what they were doing is they were coming in with some type of machine, a little handheld thing, wave around the air for a few minutes and go from there.
Right.
When it came time for the air test that we had scheduled, there was a guy from the railroad, somebody from the EPA, and then a local county sheriff that, and that was standard procedure. That didn't do it that way with everybody.
Right.
And I ended up, say, come on in, let's check it out. You're going to do just go down the basement to start with. And that's when they wanted me to, sign this paper. And I'm not a lawyer. There's some terminology on there that I didn't 100% understand. And I, said I didn't want to sign that until, I could have it approved by an attorney that it wasn't okay to sign. And that was when they had told me that, well, we can't do the air test unless you sign the paper. And I went,
whoa.
Well, in a nice, polite way, there's the door.
Yeah.
And then after it was reviewed by an attorney, I was advised not to sign that paper. So,
do you remember why the attorney suggested that or recommended you not sign it?
It was just I just took a picture with it, and texted to him, and he just immediately come back and said, "Don't sign it." And that was really all I needed to hear. Again, the terminology is something. I said I'm not a lawyer, and I know that if you phrase things certain ways, it means one thing, and you could flip a couple of words around and it means something else. So
it's really interesting that whoever was asking you to sign that document was doing so at the same moment they're proposing to test your house, because I'm making an assumption here. You haven't shown me the document, so I don't know what the document says, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if it was some sort of release from liability or something like that, right?
It was something like that, where by signing, I was agreeing to indemnify and release from into or from all future and this.
Right.
And again, like I said, I'm not an attorney, but
that's such it strikes me, my opinion is that's really ambushing you, because you're just a homeowner going, test my house, period, right?
Yeah,
to determine whether it's safe to go back, not release the company from liability. I mean, that's crazy.
Absolutely. And, I guess I learned from a young age, you don't sign your name unless you read it.
Yep.
And if you don't understand what it says, then you shouldn't be putting your name on it.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I just didn't fully understand what it meant.
Yeah, that's smart. So they left without doing the test.
Well, they were in my house and the machine was turned on and running and making noises. So, there was a monitor that was going off in my home, and if they failed to record the readings, that would be on them, not on me.
Right. But in your mind, were you waiting for some sort of test and results to determine that you would move back into the home?
Yeah, I think that I think our line of thought was similar to a lot of people's, that if you could do an air test and show me that the air quality in my home is okay,
right?
That's one thing. But then also some type of I would call it a decontamination process,
right?
Not necessarily a cleaning process, but a decontamination process,
right?
And again, like I said, I did talk to a few professionals, and basically what was said to me was it would depend on how the testing came back. There you could be what they call background levels, which would be normal.
Right.
You could have elevated, slightly elevated, highly elevated, and that would determine the recommended remediation process.
So you didn't sign the document. They left. Did you ever get your home tested again?
Well, we did. We went back to the assistance center. I believe it was on the 16th or 17th of February, looking for those additional reimbursements of the money that we had been spending. And they had, at that point, told me that we were cut off because I didn't do their air test. And
now let's get this straight, because this is what's interesting. Excuse me for a minute.
Oh, no.
You requested the test, right, before you go back, or did they offer the test?
They were offered, and you just had to, I called a number, and I was basically put on a list. They called me back, said, hey, we didn't forget about you. We will be in contact. And then they did call to schedule the test.
Right. So they offer the test, and I'm assuming something because they'd like you back in the home, right? Because they're spending money for this.
Oh, yes.
This displacement, right, for the evacuation. Then they spring the letter on you, which is the hold harmless letter, right? Mm-hmm. And you say, I'm not going to sign it. Then when you go back and say, I need to get my home tested, and, oh, by the way, continue to pay for my lodging, right, and mm-hmm. expenses and so forth, they go, well, because you didn't sign the piece of paper, or because you didn't have the test done, which was connected to the mm-hmm. signing of the document, which is, really subterfuge in my opinion. Now you're in a catch-22 because you're off-site. Now you're kind of hanging out there financially, right? Because you've now got to pay, correct?
At that point, yes, that right. is correct. On that particular day when they had told us we were cut off, they did not pay for our hotel rooms for, I have the dates wrote down, but a certain number of days. But they did reimburse us for like our food and gas that we had purchased at that time.
Right. Okay.
And at that point, they said that we were cut off. Well, in the meantime, I had filed a claim with my homeowner's insurance.
Right. Okay.
And originally, they weren't covering this, and because it's not your typical kind of thing.
Right.
And so we were very fortunate, very blessed the whole time, because our homeowner's insurance decided that they were going to cover this for us.
Wow.
And they picked up with the reimbursements back to the date that the railroad had cut us off.
Wow.
So we did have a handful of days that were kind of up in the air that we were going to potentially have to pay out of pocket, but they homeowners went back and covered it for us. So we were able to get reimbursed for those the hotel stays.
Something that I just want to offer is just sort of an insight here is that economists say that most American families can't handle more than a $400 emergency. And when I've thought about this, and I don't need to hear about your personal financial situation, but when I've heard about what happened here in East Palestine and people having to flip out a credit card to rent a hotel room, right? So rather than being told, here's a voucher for a hotel, right, which means it's paid in advance, right?
Yes.
You had to, in effect, finance or pay out of your own pocket and then get reimbursed, right? So that's a cash flow thing, right?
Yes.
And so, and the problem is that the longer that goes, the tighter those lines of credit become for you personally, for anyone. It's not you, Josh. It's just anybody who's in the situation. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm the average family that has only got a $400 buffer, and I'm told I got to get out of my house by a railroad company because of a disaster they've created, and now I've got to pay for that hotel room and food and whatever on my own, I'm going to burn through $400 really fast.
Oh, very fast, yes. Yeah. And like I said, we've been one of the more fortunate families and one of the more blessed families in this situation because, we personally know people and we have some family members that are in that situation where they didn't want to leave or they couldn't leave because they didn't actually just have the money to go and get the hotel room. And even though you could drive back with that receipt and get reimbursed, it proved difficult for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I've always sort of assumed. I mean, again, just thinking about how difficult how many Americans are living on such a tight budget in these times, to have this kind of disaster happen and then told, it's one thing to say I'm going to reimburse. It's quite another thing to say, here's a voucher.
They started doing something like that, I guess, here. I'm not sure how long ago, where you could go and get basically a prepaid debit card.
Right.
And then at that point, you take your receipts back, and then they would reload the card.
Right.
So they did start something like that, but I mean, not initially. And if we didn't have a couple of credit cards in the pocket, we wouldn't have made it very long. That's
right. So ultimately, your homeowner's insurance ended up making you whole in terms of these out-of-pocket expenses. Right?
Yes.
From the time the railroad cut you off, right?
Yes.
But tell me about the testing. When did you get that sort of done?
So after the homeowners insurance, decided they were going to cover this for us, and they were going to cover testing. Yes, they and originally, they said if you could find somebody to come in and do some testing, you'll let me know.
Right.
And I was like, perfect, great. I already know somebody that can come do it.
Right.
And originally, that company was going to do the air test, and then the homeowners insurance called me and offered a service. Said they had found a company that does this type of work, the environmental and these types of testing, and they offered the service, to have them come out and do surface testing inside and outside the home. So I was like, yes, of course, I would like to have that done.
Absolutely.
And those testings were done the last week of February.
Okay.
And we are currently awaiting the results of the testing.
You're still waiting for the results?
Yes.
For people who don't know, it's April the 13th when we're recording this. This was late February this was done, so that's almost 6 weeks. And you're still waiting for results.
Yeah. Originally, the company that did the air test said that it would be about a week to get that result back. And the company that did the surface testing, they said that about a week for what they would say was an oral report, and about 2 weeks for a written report, and then it could be up to 4 weeks for an actual written report with a recommended remediation process.
Okay.
But then, with all of the testing that's going on and things like that, I think these labs are just kind of backed up.
Right.
But again, it's been a while, so we were anticipating getting results sooner. But at the same time, I'm not very disappointed that it's taking this long, because it's just basically keeping us in the hotel and we're not forced into a situation that may or may not be a safe situation.
So you're still living in a hotel.
Yes.
And it's been, let's see, this is the 13th of April. That was the 3rd of February. So that's almost 10 weeks.
Yeah, it'll be 10 weeks tomorrow.
Wow. Man. So work from home for you is work out of a hotel, right?
Well, we did upgrade to a suite. So
that's one light positive moment.
Yeah. You gotta try to find that half glass full moment in things.
Right. So do you know anything about the condition of your home?
No, it's still it's pretty much the way we left it, and we're just waiting for the results of the testing to come back, and whatever the recommended remediation process is.
Right. Which your homeowner's insurance, assuming, will take care of, correct?
Yes.
Right. Have you heard from the railroad company? After they cut you off from the hotel reimbursement. I mean, have they reached out to you at all? Have they talked to you?
Oh no. We went there one time after they cut us off when they started the what they're calling a voluntary relocation is what the area is considered under now.
Right.
That during this remediation process where they're digging up this contaminated soil,
right,
and doing whatever they're doing with the water, and so they have the voluntary relocation, and we went down one time to try to get reimbursed for some receipts, and not for the hotel, just for like some food and gas and stuff like that. And I got it, not without struggle, but we got that. And then other than that one time, we've just been going through the homeowner's insurance, and it's just better that way.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I would have made the assumption, but I'm incorrect, that the Norfolk Southern would have reached out to see how you're doing. I mean, this has affected thousands of people.
Oh, yes. No, it's affected many, many people. And, there's people that couldn't leave. Maybe they didn't have a vehicle. Maybe they didn't have anywhere to go. And
didn't have the credit cards.
Didn't have the credit cards. And like I've said before, and I'll say many times again, that we're one of the more fortunate type of people. We've been in the same hotel the whole time, as opposed to we're seeing people will come and stay for 2 or 3 days, and because of reservations and things like that, they have to go somewhere else. And there's a lot of people out there that are doing hotel hopping, and we didn't have to do any of that. So again, we've under the circumstances, we've been very very fortunate and very blessed.
So, what I guess your plans are to stay in the hotel until you get some guidance from the testing company and the homeowner's insurance company, correct?
Yeah. That's our intention. Is we're going to stay there, and whatever the testing comes back, and whatever that remediation process is, it may just be what they're called a surface clean.
Right.
And they do like the duct work and the surfaces and the fabrics, your couches and beds, and say that they got all of the toxic chemicals out of there, and it's safe to go back home. Or it could be such a point. It would be an extreme case, but on the other end of the spectrum, where they have to gut the house to the studs,
right?
That kind of thing, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle. We have no idea.
Have you ever considered relocating out of East Palestine?
Oh yes, yeah. That's something that we've talked about. It's a difficult decision. Most of our family is in East Palestine or very nearby. Our friends, our family, our church that we're at right now. it's something that we've discussed. It's not something that we've set in stone, because if you come back to town for something, you kind of miss it.
Sure.
It is home.
Sure.
But at the same time, you have to think on the other side of that they may be telling us that they got this cleaned up and everything's safe and everything's good, and you people are just imagining these symptoms in your head. But at the end of the day, if we take a look throughout the history of the world, when you have an environmental disaster like this, with the mixture of the chemicals and the magnitude and the volume of everything, I can't remember ever hearing about how a situation like this turned out well. With long-term effects,
Right.
Long-term exposure, even if it is at a low dose, is it, if you can go and get everything dug out of the ground, which I'm not convinced you can do that. But, the air quality may be better. But if you consider the, we're going to call them surface waters, the streams and the creeks that are affected by this. Again, I'm not an expert, but from what I gather, when those, if we get a high rain or that water picks up and that babbling brook, so to speak, is, going to potentially release, some of these chemicals into the air. And that creek that's so highly contaminated is half a block from my house.
Wow.
So we just have more questions than we have answers right now.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really, really difficult because, that's a real dilemma because, as you point out, on the one hand, you were, for almost all practical purposes, born and raised here, right? You grew up here, you've lived here all your life, this is home, and yet there's that uncertainty associated with the toxicity. Does it still reside here? And if so, how will it affect you, your wife, your children, others? And the long-term health implications could be profound. And to your point, again, not saying anything about northern stuff because I don't know, but other companies have been reluctant to accept responsibility for the long-term consequences of these sorts of disasters, right?
Yeah, and if they come out and anybody in a situation, if you come out and admit some type of fault or make some type of a promise to do something, then it is a kind of an admission of fault and responsibility. And, I'm not sure that I've heard that out of Norfolk Southern yet. We've got, you hear different organizations, saying that they're going to hold them liable and hold them accountable and all those things. And I know the state of Ohio is suing them. I believe the federal government is also suing them. There are some different states that are suing them, on top of all of the people that are in our area, you
Right.
know. So I would think that if the federal government in the state of Ohio and some other states that are suing them, they feel that they have some merit, that they wouldn't bring a suit against a major corporation like that unless they felt they had a leg to stand on.
No, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So I guess for you, day to day is, work and then waiting for the test results.
Yeah, it's, I'll work, and then it's almost, at times it seems like it's another whole full-time job just to try to keep the financial thing, straight.
Yeah.
I got to go and, pay for the hotel once a week on the credit card and submit that to the insurance and hope I get that reimbursement in a timely fashion so that I can make a several $1,000 payment on my credit card so that I can charge it all again. And this is the ongoing, seemingly never-ending process.
Yeah, as a businessman, I would call that a cash flow nightmare because I can totally relate and understand.
Yeah, I'd have to dig out the actual receipts and add them up, but at this point, we're somewhere between 25 and 30K out of pocket.
Wow.
Now, I've actually been reimbursed for almost all of that at this point, but, it is a process.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, how do you keep in contact with friends and family that you're living sort of elsewhere? I mean, how do you guys maintain a sense of community and connection?
It's challenging, but we try to do our best, and communicate, and with the kids, it's usually with a text message or a messenger or something like that, or you got to get on Facebook to see what they're doing, that kind of thing. And then some of our other friends, but the one thing, usually after church on Sundays, we'll stop by family member's house and hang out for a little bit, and things like that. So it's definitely different, and it's challenging for sure.
Yeah, that's really it's disruptive, big time.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, if you could, there's people who are going to be listening to this who we talked to Reverend Miller earlier, and he's talked about how helpful a lot of communities have been in terms of making, food and water and clothing and money and so forth available. But, as this thing drags on, what would you, to the degree that someone wanted to be helpful to East Palestine and to folks like you, what could they do? What can they do?
I would think that at this point, if they get the remediation process done, and they're done kicking up toxic dust into into the community, and if you can get the water and the creek beds clean, if that's possible, and the contamination quits coming, I would think that the major concern at that point would be the drinking water and the bathing water. We know that there are several wells around the area that are contaminated, that have tested positive for some of these chemicals. They're saying currently, I think that our city water is testing safe.
Would you drink it?
No. No, I wouldn't. Again, that's just me. I didn't drink it before, though. But I definitely not now. And I would think that maybe, moving forward, even down the line when things are settled and the lawsuits are settled and all of those things, I would think that the groundwater issue is going to be the biggest thing that I know that Norfolk Southern has agreed to, or they already have done some type of carbon filters, I believe is what they are, that they're going to be installing into the water treatment plant here for East Palestine. I would think that it would be a really good move if you could also have some type of system in your home.
Right.
And I would think that maybe that would be something that would be helpful moving forward. I don't know a lot about that either, but I would imagine there's got to be some type of system that can purify the water and give you just some good old-fashioned high-quality H2O, to quote the water boy.
Sure, absolutely. So how can other people be helpful to you guys and to East Palestine?
At this point, there's just so many more questions, and we don't have an end date. At this point, it's not game over.
Right.
So it's really difficult to say that, we think we might need this, and a couple of months from now, or however long it's going to be before they actually have the cleanup done. I think it's probably better to try to assess at that time, because not everybody's had testing in their home, as far as being able to do the recommended remediation process. And the testing is very expensive. So, would it be more helpful to have people's homes tested?
Right.
So that they can have the right type of cleaning, Or do you just need a couple people's homes tested and you assume that everybody's home is like that and it needs a cleaning or
Right.
a decontamination or whatever the process is? And those things are also very expensive. And if your homeowner's insurance isn't covering it, that's a lot of money out of pocket for just about everybody.
So, okay, so that's helpful. So, money for cleaning or contamination, decleaning, right? Decontamination. I'm sorry, thank you. So, for cleaning or decontamination would be really helpful for many residents at East Palestine whose homeowners insurance won't pay for that.
Yeah, I would think that would be something that would be really helpful.
Okay.
If you have a smaller house or a bigger house, the cost is going to be different, but we know it's going to be several $1,000s.
Right.
And like I said, moving forward with a water treatment system for the home, there's a few local companies that, do a lot of installs in the area. But, let's face it, those home water treatment systems are, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000.
Right.
On top of the filters that you need to buy or the whatever kind of you have. Is it a reverse osmosis or filtration, or is it something where you're still dumping salt in there? But either way, it's not just the initial cost; it's the recurring fees that are going to also have to stick with people. So, I think that there were being truckloads and truckloads of bottled water being brought in for people to drink. But I would also think that, the water that you're going to be bathing in,
right,
is also important.
Absolutely.
I would think that, if if people are wanting to help, that at this point, I think it's more to do with, maybe some cleaning, decontamination processes and, some type of water systems for people's homes. I know some people are going to leave. A lot of people are going to stay. And, at that point, I would think that, excuse me, that, some type of water filtration or, some actual, for real professional home remediation.
Right. Any thoughts on, immediately after the East Palestine derailment occurred, there were hearings, in Congress, and there were a couple of pieces of legislation that were put out there that would tighten up the safety rules associated with, rail carriers and so forth. I understand from others that there's been, in fact, I was reading this today online, that there's been pushback from Norfolk Southern that said, we don't buy off on that. For instance, we don't think you need to have two people on a train, as an example. One is good enough, and some other stuff they're pushing back on. Do you have any thoughts on, this whole safety regulation train piece at all? I mean,
I would think that in a system where you have, I believe, was it the transportation director, Pete Buttigieg,
yeah,
said that, there's over 1,000 of these a year. I think it's, 15,
right.
1,700 a year,
That's right.
which is, 5, 6 a day, give or take, depending on whatever. I would think that, if nationwide 5 or 6 times a day, 3, 4, 5 times 6 a day, when you've got these, these trains derailing, that I would think that, maybe you got to take a look at that, and maybe make some type of changes or adjustments to what is considered safety standards.
Right.
And I'd had a thought a while back that, essentially, they're using technology from centuries ago to transport, these modern things. It's a combustible engine.
Right.
It's not a steam engine anymore where they're shoveling coal into it to get it across the country. But it's essentially the exact same thing. The design of these things hasn't changed for a long, long time. And I think that if you look at what used to be building codes, compared to what they are now, what they consider to be safe. Or if you look at an owner's manual from a car, maybe back in the 30s or 40s or 50s, where you can open up the owner's manual and they, tell you how to adjust the time,
right,
compared to now they tell you don't drink the battery acid.
Right.
So they've come that far, with safety for people in cars, that they include don't drink the battery acid. That I would think that maybe something with the different types of transportation, with the rails, for example, that essentially, you may have some monitors every so many miles or something
right,
like that, but
right,
the mode of transportation is the same. And they're still using the same medium, the rails that are sitting on these railroad ties. The wheels on the train, the materials could be slightly different than they used to be, but I'd imagine, if you look at a picture of a train from the Wild Wild West back then, and you look at one now, they're very, very similar.
They are very similar.
The railroad ties, the spikes that they use, the actual rails. It's been the same thing for how long now?
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Sure.
that we're making a push for all of these other changes in the world. Safety standards and environmental standards and things of that nature, that maybe these things do need to have a much closer look at.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, I appreciate your time today very much.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
It's been great, and I wish you and Abby and your family the best, and hopefully the uncertainty associated with your home won't last too much longer, and that you can find out what it takes to remediate the damage and hopefully get back into it,
Yeah, we're gonna take it one day at a time, and go from there, and see what happens.
I hear you. Well, again, thanks very much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This has been Mark Good with Fact Ohio. We appreciate you taking time to listen to Josh's story. If you'd like to learn more about what's going on in East Palestine and how you can be of assistance, jump on over to our website at factohio.org. That's factohio.org. We're a 501(c) located right here in Ohio, doing our best to put people's attention on environmental issues that are affecting all the citizens of the great state of Ohio. Thanks again.